Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So I didn't get the chance to write this up, but I do want to discuss it. A hero was released today. A hero was released. Chelsea Manning walked out of prison today. I'm going to read the story and have a message for Manning. Look, I don't know the chances for her ever seeing this video, but still, just in case, on some off chance, she's surfing the web at night and she sees this video, I have a message. Just for a little background, Chelsea Manning, the Army private who released a vast trove of U.S. state secrets and was punished by the U.S. military for months in penal conditions denounced by the UN as torture, has been released from a military prison in Kansas after serving 7 years of a 35-year sentence. Manning walked out of freedom after 2,545 days in military captivity. She was arrested May 20, 2010, outside a U.S. Army base on the outskirts of Baghdad, having leaked hundreds of thousands of documents and videos downloaded from intelligence databases to WikiLeaks. The most notable of these videos that Manning released was footage of a helicopter, a U.S. helicopter, gunning down a Reuters reporter. As this pilot gunned down these guys with a gleefulness that comes across in the tape, he was laughing and joking about murdering these people. This brings a problem. You didn't know who you were killing. You didn't know who you were murdering, which is the problem with U.S. military in general over the past, God knows how many years. Understand, 90% of the people we dropped bombs on was innocent. They were civilians. This was Obama's record. This was Bush's record. Murdering a large number of civilians. Manning, at his trial, he essentially made this point of saying he wanted to start a conversation. He thought that Iraq had a complex society and that if we were actually there to help those people, then ultimately we should not do things that would adversely affect that. Meaning, if we're murdering these people, if we're hurting them, if we're doing things that is unbecoming of humanity in general, that's not going to help that particular society. Now, the funny part is, Manning actually drunk the Kool-Aid. Like, he actually believed this idea of the United States is in these countries to help those countries. He was a true believer. Now, the beauty of this, and even to a certain degree magnificence of this, is that because he was a true believer, he looked at what was taking place and said, whoa, this is too much. We need to talk about whether or not this is right. We need to talk about whether this is right. He hoped to start a larger conversation on the United States' interaction in these other countries, in this particular case, Iraq, and whether or not the policy of the United States in that country was somehow helping or adversely hurting that country and our stated objectives in that country. Like I said, he drank the Kool-Aid. He full well believed that, the United States was there for good. And like I said, the magnificence of this is because he believed it, because he had that, well, at the time it was a he, but because she had that thing in her, she had to say something about it. That's an amazing thing. Like, it was to the point of, wait a minute, we're supposed to be here helping these people. The things that we're doing aren't helping these people. Somebody needs to know about this. That's honest. That's earnest. That's earnest. That's an amazing quality. That's a quality that certainly the other thousands and thousands of people that we've had over there did not share. They didn't share it. So that is a rare talent. Or a rare thing. Manning, I call you a hero because you're a hero. I call you a hero, you're a hero. Ultimately, you're a whistleblower. Now, state, just in general, just state, whether it's abstract concept or in reality, it compels through force. Meaning, the power of the state, for the most part, is the ability to murder, to hurt, and to detain. Now, in this particular capacity, because the state has that capacity of injuring the individual and injuring the populace, what the state mandates, or the things that the state says, for the most part, is given a certain amount of authority. Meaning there is a natural bias towards giving an authority to something that the state says, because ultimately the state can murder you. And the state does murder a lot of people. That gives this connotation of what's right and wrong. Like, in this odd subordinate reality of sorts, you could say, well, it's creating its own definition of what's right and what's wrong based upon the laws that that particular state is passing. So if Iran says, yeah, it's illegal to wear earrings, that's ridiculous, but the state, again, is mandating it. In this particular capacity, the state made a determination that the person who released information about abuse by the U.S. government, atrocious behavior by the U.S. government, the state mandated that the problem wasn't the behavior that the United States government was taking. It wasn't that we murdered those Reuters agents. The problem was that you told that we murdered those Reuters agents, in addition to the other behavior that the U.S. was doing abroad. What I'm getting at is there's a distinction between the thing that the state will say is accurate or correct and actual reality in the sense of what's right and correct. Now, yes, these are competing objectives. From the state standpoint, the state cares about secrecy. You have individuals in the particular state, and those people, because they're held up to such a high degree of scrutiny by the populace, don't like looking stupid. That's what a lot of this boils down to. Like, understand, yes, the government is a thing, but ultimately there are people in those offices. And if you're putting out information in this way, and you're finding that these guys are clowns, these guys are murderers, these guys are psychopaths, you can understand that it would not just embarrass some of the people who are in those positions who are supposed to oversee that particular thing, but it tarnishes the image in a way. So the state doesn't necessarily like information about the state getting out, including when the state is doing nasty, atrocious, and pretty disgusting, monstrous things. The individual, however, has a different intention, or the responsibilities of the individual, particularly if you're talking about being a virtuous, noble person, a person of principle, and a person of integrity. Those objectives are different. Those objectives are very different. It compels the individual, particularly if he's looking at a situation that he himself is deeming absolutely ghastly, and he releases information knowing full well he is being a whistleblower. He should be protected by whistleblower laws, full well understanding that what he is doing is right. What he's doing is right. The government wants to hide something, not because of some state secret. They want to hide it because they're embarrassed by the behavior. The behavior is atrocious. So yes, the government wants to hide it. The individual who's functioning on a level of integrity looks at that situation and says, this is monstrous. I don't give a shit what you've told me. This is monstrous. I'm looking at this with my own eyes. I am a person. I am fully aware of what I am observing, and this is monstrous behavior. This behavior needs to be discussed, and the public needs to know about it. That is a heroic measure, because ultimately you've allowed your integrity, you've allowed this sense of right, almost from a cosmic level of right, at least in regards to humanity, if you're putting your stake in the ground, humanity. Because understand, right is not, it's abstract, it's dependent upon what you're trying to accomplish. So yes, I'm putting my stake in the ground in the sense of integrity. So yeah, I am compelled to say something about this thing, despite the consequences to my person. Now, I don't know if Manning knew that they were going to torture him. I don't know if he thought that they were going to put him in prison. I have no idea. I would imagine Manning have seen the military kill a lot of people. I would imagine he know they were pretty serious about it. And if you're releasing information like that, certainly that information, they're going to bite back. I don't know if he would have thought that Obama would have went so far as to abuse the Espionage Act to do something like that, particularly when what he was released was waste, fraud, and abuse. What I'm getting at is, it is a heroic thing. It is a noble thing. It is an amazing thing for an individual to look at the power of the state and point to it and say, wait a minute, this is wrong. And yes, you have a certain amount of power to affect me in a particular way, but you do not own necessarily the definition of right and the definition of correctness. It is a correct behavior for me to get across what my government is doing, particularly when what my government is doing is atrocious. It's atrocious. Manning's a hero. Manning's a hero. He should have never spent a day in that prison. And the fact that Obama was going to use the Espionage Act to that degree in order to lock up people who were heroes, they were whistleblowers. People, I hear this argument sometimes where people would say, well, yeah, he shouldn't have did it. So how are you going to know what your government is doing? So you essentially want to be blissfully unaware of the behavior that your government is taking across the world. That makes no sense to me. That makes no sense to me. There's this idea of civilian oversight. The government's power and authority comes from the consent of the people who they're governing. That's us. If we don't know what you're doing, you can't possibly have our consent. And no, you damn sure did not have my consent to murder down that Reuters agent. You didn't have my consent to murder all those civilians. You didn't have my consent to lock all those people up in Guantanamo prison, essentially a torture camp. What I'm getting at is, unless you have the information about how your government is behaving abroad, it's like you can't do anything about it. Your government can always say state secret. It always has a vested interest in saying state secret. So you can't take the government's word for it. It's like, hey, trust me to, tell on myself, or trust me to keep myself accountable. It doesn't work that way. Manning's a hero. Snowden is a hero. All those people, for the most part, who's leaking information about behavior that the government, that it's taking, and it is atrocious behavior, are heroes. They put their lives on the line for something better and a higher ideal, and they should be applauded for it. Good job. Good job, Manning. I am sorry you had to be in prison for any length of time at all. No, you should not have been in prison for any length of time. Yes, it is atrocious that they put you in prison for it. No, just because the state says something and has force to injure and to kill and to detain doesn't make them right. It doesn't make them right. And certainly, having a pilot laughing and joking as he's murdering people to which he did not know, even though he was murdering, is problematic. And it should have been exposed. So, I'll leave it at that. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Alright guys, if you enjoyed the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and you can always support the work through Patreon.